Good evening, I'm Glenn Tilley. I'm at the Provincial Archives in St. John's. This is where CBC News has been keeping the stories from its television newscasts over the past 25 years. There are literally thousands of stories here on film cores like this. And tonight we take you back to some of the people, events, and stories we've covered over the past 25 years. CBC Television News in St. John's first went on the air from the old Browning Harvey building on Water Street West 25 years ago today. Our first newsroom. There's Robin Piercy, Jack Howlett, Bill Bone, and Robin with Darth Sparty, the news director. This was state-of-the-art film editing. Mill Pugh puts a story together with an old viewer and splicer donated by some other CBC station in Canada. And Mike Bryan here is still with us today. The new TV building was under construction on Westerland Road. That's Blackhall School in the background. Any photographer who stood on this same spot today would be hit by a dozen cars on the Prince Philip Parkway. The new building, where we are today, was ready for us in 1966.
Bren Wallace in St. John's West. No.
There were so many events and changes underway in the 1960s that CBC journalists were barely able to keep up. There were social upheavals caused by resettlement and new highways, political upheavals as the Smallwood government weakened and staggered toward collapse. But until the early 60s, lifestyles had not changed much for the average Newfoundlander.
The little coastal ship goes poking into bays and fjords, which are the same today as they were when the Basque fishermen and whalers explored them 4 and 5 centuries ago. This is a land which change has passed by, touching only its fringes with the electric fingers of progress. Dr. Ann Calder and her husband, Dr. Michael Calder, worked together as a medical team, serving the coast in both directions. They have been doing it now for 7 years.
We still have no communication by road with the outside world. There's no highway at all. Our only means of getting in and out of Burgeo is still boats. Coastal boats are a big event. And the smaller the place, I think, the more of an event it is. The really small places, the coastal boat comes in, and it's weekly or twice weekly, one each direction. The wharf is always crowded every time there's a boat.
As I rode ashore from my schooner close by, a girl on the beach sure I chanced to espy. Her hair was red and her bonnet was blue, and I knew at her glance she's from Harbour Lacroix. And as I was parting this maiden this he broke up my party with one single blow. Said regards to your missus as we can go. I remember her when she's from Harbour Lacroix.
Not only the coastal boats based it on certain future, in St. John's on the 1st of March, 1967, the Algerine prepares to sail for the seal hunt. Only 3 years earlier, a company in Quebec made a film that accused the seal hunters of extreme cruelty. Already, there were concerns that the growing public protest might affect the seal markets. But in the late 60s, the life of a sealer went on. Since Confederation, some of the most notable milestones in our history have been marked by openings and closings. As one new industry opened up, another shut down, as governments tried desperately to provide jobs. One of the first new industries covered by CBC television was also one of the strangest.
Well, as I was a-walking one morning for pleasure, well, I spied a young...
A rancher from Saskatchewan, Harold Lees, raised over 100 beef cattle on the Burin Peninsula in the early 60s. So, in 1964, he brought in over 1,000 more by train from Western Canada. They drove the cattle from Goobies down the Burin Peninsula Highway. The last thing the people of Swift Current ever expected to see was a cattle drive. And the last person they expected to see with it was J.R. Ewing, or J.R. Smallwood. There may have been enough local grazing for 100 cattle on the peninsula, but it turned out there was not nearly enough for 1,000. The Flying L Ranch, with only 400 cattle left, went under in October 1966. The dollars involved in setting up the Flying L were like cattle feed compared to the cost of most new industries in the 60s. Churchill Falls, for example, $1 billion. But it was one of the most efficiently run construction projects in all of Canada, either before or since. But while Newfoundland owns the project, Quebec owns the profits. On the other hand, the oil refinery at Come By Chance kept our reporters busy with some kind of labor management disputes nearly every week. One time, they shut the project down because the workers wanted the day off for Regatta Day in St. John's, 100 miles away. The oil refinery and the electric production company at Long Harbor were probably the most controversial projects of the 60s. This phosphorus plant in Placentia Bay, using the latest technology, was supposed to be environmentally safe. But on the 12th of February, 1969, thousands of dead herring began washing up on the beaches of Arnold's Cove. For weeks, fishermen from Fairhaven, Southern Harbor, and Little Harbor had been catching red-colored herring. They were obviously not healthy. When whole schools of fish began to die, the problem could not be ignored any longer. Diver Cal Trickett took one of her cameras to the bottom of the bay. It was 3 months before the federal government announced it was suspicious that ERCO had caused the pollution. They closed the whole northern half of Placentia Bay to fishing. Over 200 fishermen were out of work. Tom Cavanaugh had this report.
It's been less than 3 weeks since the plant was first shut down and the northern half of Placentia Bay closed to the fishery. But the fishermen have been feeling the effects of the pollution in the water much longer than that. They haven't been able to sell any of their fish since the first dead ones began appearing about 3 months ago.
I only can speak for myself. I got about enough for another month or something like that. I'm going to dump his having coming in when I got to get some sort of assistance.
Oh, still living on a little bit red saved up. It's pretty shy now.
Well, is that going to last very long?
No, I guarantee you it's not going to last too long. Not going to last too long, but I can't.
I'm finding it tough enough with 9 children and no income. And everybody, I suppose everybody in the world today got installments. I know I have.
Well, it's right now, I see something ahead of us now, only just starvation. I mean, unless they soon got up with something.
Well, what are you living on now? What are you doing for money?
Nothing, because we got none. A lot of us haven't anyhow.
The fishermen were compensated sometime later for part of their losses. The plant installed new equipment to stop pollution of the bay. But their troubles were only beginning. Of course, the most successful projects over the years were those based on our natural resources. The iron ore mines in Labrador West were opened in the 60s. They are still viable, but employ only a fraction of the old workforce now. The people of Newfoundland had to learn the hard way that a mine has a relatively short lifespan. One of the first and hardest lessons came in 1966. The iron ore mines at Wabana closed on the 30th of June, after 71 years of operation. The government kept Bell Islanders on a string for months. Premier Smallwood announced a series of deals that would hopefully reopen the mines. Then, After a provincial election in September, the Premier admitted there was no hope. In May 1967, the Islanders paraded a coffin full of iron ore to the steps of Confederation Building. Their concerns were to be echoed in many parts of Newfoundland since then.
You a miner, sir?
Yes, 17 years.
Any pension?
No pension at all, no.
Have you thought of relocating?
Well, I have thought of it, but it's too much rent. I was up in Toronto for 3 months, golf, but it's too much rent there. I'd have to take a couple of kids out of school to make a go of it here, you know. And I got no trade at any skill work that I could make a go of it.
What would you like to see done?
Anything to set up so as to draw work for them in where they won't have to leave their homes. My husband in particular, I don't want to see him go away.
They get home daily.
Premier Smallwood invited the unemployed of Bell Island to join the resettlement program or to become commuters.
You have 500 places like that in Newfoundland. You have 600. You have 700 different communities in our province today where there's no work. An occasional school teacher, 1 or 2 civil servants, a few shopkeepers and clerks, and that's about it. That's the jobs. But all the men of the place, some of them can go fishing, do a bit of lobster fishing, a bit of cod fishing. Some of them go to the seal hunt. But mostly, they go away and they get jobs.
Many Bell Islanders did resettle, but they jumped into their cars and drove right out of Newfoundland on a brand new Trans-Canada highway. They finished that drive in '65, as promised, even if they had to lay some of that new asphalt in a snowstorm. They were big on cavalcades in those days, so at the official opening on the 11th of July, 1966, reporter Tom Cavanaugh went along for the drive.
Transportation in Newfoundland has come a long way since William Cormack walked across the island 144 years ago. But only in this present year has it become possible for the ordinary traveler, the motorist, to cross the island in the way he's dreamed of for years on a smooth carpet of asphalt.
And the result of that is that today there are 800 different settlements, coves, harbors, bays, settlements on this island, 800 of them that have been connected up by road to the Trans-Canada Highway and to the road network that we have built on the island. And for the first time in the nearly 500 years of Newfoundland's history, the people of Newfoundland now are able to see each other. They're able to meet each other. They're able to get to know each other.
The new highway cut travel time across the island in half, and that brought in the long-distance bus. By December 1968, Canadian National was running trans-island buses in competition with its own trains. As the train service declined, the bus service improved, and it was no contest. On the 2nd of July, 1969, the last passenger train ran from Port aux Basques to St. John's. The famous Newfie Bullet was about to expire after 71 years. On this last trip, more than 200 passengers went all the way across, most for sentimental reasons. Not only passenger trains disappeared in the late 60s, whole communities were being moved from isolated coves to more central locations. It was said that better services and more jobs could be provided there, and it was called the Resettlement Program.
Newfoundlanders have been moving house for centuries. However, it's only since 1954, when the provincial government first implemented its centralization program, that we've seen whole communities pull up stakes, leave their isolation behind, and begin life in new and more populous areas. The first mass movement took place in Bonavista Bay some years ago, but this internal migration was never more evident than this year, when Placentia Bay was affected. Before the winter snows disappear next spring, Placentia Bay, Newfoundland's largest, will have its island communities stripped of their inhabitants. As many as 4,000 people may be involved.
Lottie Sr. moved from Port Elizabeth in Placentia Bay to Red Harbor in 1969. According to Lottie, moving house was taken right in stride.
If the high tide was in the morning, the people would probably get up and light their fire and have breakfast in the house in the morning and let the fire down and then secure a few things, like everything was left in the house. And then anything that the top might fall down and break or anything like that, like ornaments were all packed and dishes were packed, but the furniture wasn't packed or anything. It just lay where it was. And so then they pull the house on board and we cross over the 3 miles to Red Harbor, and they had a landing stage here, and the tractor would take it off the barge and bring it in, and then the tractor would take it in the road and rest it on its site, probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they'd be gone back to Port Elizabeth for another house and take it in, and the people would light their fire and have supper in the house.
One of the main benefits of resettlement was supposed to be a better education. More facilities could be provided at big central schools. Young people may think there is a big uproar about education today. They should have been here in the 60s.
I would be prepared to move if it would have any effect that
I don't think
that the church
would
not here, no, but at the Newfoundland Conference of the United Church, that we would pass over our buildings, our facilities, to the school boards that would not be church. And I think in our church this would have a good possibility of success. I wonder if the other churches would be interested in doing that. I think the denominational system has got to go, because here is where the waste is.
No such decision has been made by the government. And while I'm a member of that government, while I am a member of it, the government might still make the decision, but I would then not be a member of it. While I am a member of the government, that decision is not going to be made.
But I've never been as disgusted with anything in my life as this whole fiasco of the last few days. Particularly this afternoon, when we were treated to a circus performance. We were treated like a bunch of puppets on a string. And I came here, Mr. Chairman, like everybody present, out of a deep-seated interest in education in this province and in my own area. I don't know what I feel right now. I feel that I've been made a fool of, that I've been, as I said, treated like a puppet on a string, and I personally have great objections to being treated in this fashion.
Criticism like that was almost unheard of until the late 60s. Liberal governments under J.R. Smallwood had held unchallenged power until then. But now his political machine was starting to come apart. The future of his party was doomed when the Premier invited the Deputy Mayor of St. John's into his cabinet.
I know that he will serve St. John's and Newfoundland with far greater authority as Minister of Municipal Affairs than he could possibly do as Deputy Minister.
The decision has been difficult only because it was just last November that the people of St. John's elected me to the St. John's Municipal Council. I feel I've made every effort to serve the people of St. John's and the council to help overcome the many problems that face the city today. But I feel that many of these problems can only be solved properly in cooperation with the provincial government and with the assistance of the provincial government.
1968 was a troubled year for the Liberals. In May, John Crosby and Clyde Wells resigned from the cabinet and sat as independent Liberals. And then Pierre Trudeau got a tumultuous welcome during the federal election campaign. It looked like Smallwood had picked a winner.
We haven't been making many promises, but we have been telling the people of Canada that in this election, the issue not only of national unity in a French-English sense is at stake, but the issue of national unity in an economic sense is at stake. And we've been telling the people of Canada that it's our aim as a government to make sure that there are fair shares for all and that everyone has equal opportunity.
But despite the outburst of Trudeau mania, something went wrong. On June 25th, Newfoundland sent 6 Conservatives to Ottawa. Of 7 Liberals, only Don Jameson survived.
I want to say in your behalf that we are grateful.
By 1969, Smallwood's authority was challenged so severely that he called an historic leadership convention in St. John's on November 1st. He fought off John Crosby's challenge but the party was left deeply divided.
Well, I don't know. There, but pandemonium was broken loose. The senior has been pushed off the platform by this crowd of well-wishers, and the police officer is trying to hold the crowd back from him and to let him get through the crowd in front. And he's making his way down now towards the front of the platform and onto the stadium floor. It looks like he's going to be carried on the arms of his supporters and well-wishers.
I wish him success personally. And I think that that's the way we should accept the convention in a good spirit. So I wish him. I wish him well. We will continue to fight for the things we believe in the Liberal Party as Liberals.
I thank Mr. Crosby. I thank Mrs. Crosby. And I say to Mr. Crosby's friends, I know how they feel. They feel the way I would feel if I had lost.
Within days of that victory, the university Smallwood had founded rose up against him. More than 4,000 university and high school students marched on Confederation Building. They even turned convention placards against Joey. They demanded new economic policies and even greater political freedom. In the closing days of the 60s, the Liberal Party was still adrift, and Frank Moores lay waiting just over the horizon in the 70s.